Hi, this is Rick Koppel coming at you from Denver, Colorado. And welcome to another episode of PD Man. I have a couple of announcements or notes to make here. One, this is a day late, sorry, but I had some technical difficulties yesterday in getting my sound to work correctly. And so, therefore, I bought myself a new microphone. Should sound a lot better and clearer now, I think. The other note is that because of me starting a new job next Friday, that I will be moving the time that the videos start from Friday to Thursday. So expect the next video to be next Thursday. When I attended the Parkinson's 2.0 presentation on October 5th, 2019, one of the issues they discussed the new direction the research is pointing to, which is that Parkinson's most likely does not begin in the brain. It ends in the brain and it causes brain problems, but they actually suspect it begins in another part of the body. That part of the body is the gut microbiome. That's right. There's other parts of the body they suspect it may be, because they're looking at multiple scenarios. It's kind of more complicated disease than just one cause, but it usually results in inflammation. Part of the thing is they found these misfolded proteins, alpha-synuclein, hard to say fast, alpha-synuclein misfolded proteins all the way down the vagus nerve down to the gut. So they're suspecting it starts in the gut, actually, assuming that this isn't just a causal relationship that comes down. But anyway, that's what they're suspecting now, is that it starts in the gut. So that entails an interesting scenario because the gut microbiome is affected by diet. So the question before us today is, can proper diet, what diet would help to control symptoms as well as maybe prevent disease from even starting, if indeed the gut is the place where it starts at? That's what we're going to look at today. Last Thursday, I attended a webinar on diet. It's titled Parkinson's Nutrition for Living Well Today with John Duda. And I want to use segments of that today for today's video to discuss diet, obviously, because he brought all this into perspective there. So, again, I'm also going to leave links down in the description to this video, which is a full-length video on YouTube, that you're most welcome to go and enjoy. This question answer format that they used to discuss starts off talking about probiotics, but Dr. John Duda uses this to launch into discussing the microbiome, so it's helpful to see what he has to say about that.
What about probiotics?
Oh, probiotics, a good question. So there are different ways to think about that. I guess we can start now by talking about the microbiome in Parkinson's disease. And obviously, in your gut, there are trillions of bacteria that help us metabolize some of our food and produce a lot of compounds that we absorb that we couldn't have gotten otherwise. And people have been studying the gut microbiome for 10 years or so in chronic diseases like Parkinson's disease. And it's really a fascinating avenue of research because we've determined that there's very likely to be an abnormal microbiome in people with Parkinson's disease, or at least it's different than people without Parkinson's disease. We're trying to figure out the reasons why. Some of the bacteria that are more prevalent in people without Parkinson's disease are thought of as being anti-inflammatory and kind of pro-gut health because they metabolize some of the fiber that comes through from plant foods and turn them into something called short chain fatty acids, which actually feed the lining of your gut. So what you eat affects what gut bacteria you have, probably far more than what bacteria you take in the form of a probiotic. Obviously, probiotics are unregulated, so it's a little difficult to determine exactly what you're getting. A lot of them are bifidobacteria and lactobacillus and organisms like that may actually help in the upper GI system. There's been 1 or 2 studies that suggest they might be helpful. But altering your gut bacteria, you're probably more likely to do your colon bacteria, you're probably more likely to do that by taking what's called prebiotics, which are basically the fibers that those bacteria eat. The good and bad bacteria are in all of us, and which ones are thriving are which ones you feed. So if you want to feed the good bacteria, for the most part, they eat plant fiber. So eat more plant fiber, beans and greens and nuts and seeds and whole grains and things like that. If you want to eat less, if you want to starve, we'll say, the bad bacteria, then try to eat less animal protein and animal products, which can cause the proliferation of these bacteria that we think are more pro-inflammatory and more of a problem.
So what John Duda says there is also said by Dr. Michael Greger in nutritionfacts.org blog post titled How to Increase Gut Bacterial Richness. The question then becomes, can a dietary intervention have any impact? A number of studies, this is a study he's quoting, a number of studies have been associated increased microbiome richness with diets high in fruits, vegetables, and fiber. You want to keep this in mind as we're coming back to this when we discuss the best diet for PD. So next question is, what bacteria do we need to fight PD? Or can one test for the condition for a lack of good bacteria? Dr. Duda addresses that in this next video.
This goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the gut microbiome. Someone's asking what tests are recommended to determine gut health, such as SpectraCell, CBC, metal test, etc., to determine deficiencies and growth of bad bacteria. Do you recommend that people get certain tests done to look at their gut microbiome?
So I think it's a little premature to recommend a particular test for gut microbiome analysis. We're really in the stage of research for microbiome analysis. I think that the studies that are out there are group-based studies, and frankly, we do know that if you have a microbiome that is prevalent with a lot of forms of bacteria that are kind of pro-inflammatory or the ones that we think that may be somewhat detrimental, if you change your diet to a predominantly whole food plant-based diet, within 2 weeks you can dramatically change the gut flora that you have. So rather than an individual microbiome analysis isn't that helpful to a given clinician, I think. But as a whole, people with Parkinson's disease could probably benefit by modifying what they're eating to feed the healthy bacteria. There are a lot of other tests, things to look for things like small bowel overgrowth, small intestinal bowel overgrowth, which is another form of bacteria that are normally in the colon growing up into the small intestine and perhaps blocking the absorption of certain things like levodopa. If I have someone who has either requires really high dosages of Cinnamate to get a benefit, or has profound motor fluctuations with some doses that work and some don't, and on and off fluctuations throughout the day, I have been starting to send people for evaluation for small bowel intestinal overgrowth, which It's not that hard. There's some breath tests and stool tests that can now look for, the stool test is for H. pylori, but we can also look for SIBO, and sometimes treating that has been shown to be helpful in certain studies.
Yeah, according to Dr. Duda, who's basing his recommendation on several studies that have shown that the best diet for heart health, cancer health, and other diseases that are common in our society is plant-based diet.
So now let's look a little bit at how our nutrition can affect our Parkinson's. Particularly, we got a lot of questions about specific diets: keto, vegan, paleo, vegetarian, raw, for people with Parkinson's, and which, in your experience or in the medical literature, have you found work for Parkinson's symptoms?
Sure. So this is a question that I've been talking about for a while now, and if you Google my name and either the Parkinson's Foundation or the World Congress, the Parkinson's World Congress, there are lectures that I've given specifically about diet and Parkinson's disease that cover the topic in a lot more detail than we'll be able to today. But in my mind, I don't think it's pretty clear that no specific diet has a strong evidence base of support for Parkinson's disease over any other one, because there just haven't been that many studies. There was a study that came out last year from New Zealand that looked at a low-fat diet compared to a ketogenic diet that proved that people with Parkinson's disease can do it. So a ketogenic diet, to back up a little bit, is a diet that is very low in carbohydrates, so it requires your body to start burning glycogen stores and converting fatty acids into ketone bodies, which are also a source of energy for your brain cells, which normally rely on glucose for their energy, but they can use ketone bodies instead. And there's the diet originated quite a while ago in the treatment of epilepsy in children, and it has some benefits there. And people have proposed that these ketone bodies may have neuroprotective effects that could help other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease. There are animal studies of these diets, or a ketogenic diet, that seem to show some benefit, but there really isn't enough evidence to say that a given person with Parkinson's disease should adopt a ketogenic diet to slow down the degeneration of their brain cells. I think, in my estimation, the best evidence out there suggests that a whole food plant-based diet or a Mediterranean type diet has the best evidence for long-term health and wellness. I think that the evidence is pretty clear that adopting that type of diet will reduce your risk of dementia and depression and constipation and a whole host of other things that will help you in the long run, like reducing your risk of heart disease and cancer and strokes and diabetes and hypertension and things like that. So I feel comfortable recommending that people with Parkinson's disease adopt that kind of diet, because number one, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody. There are very few reasons to believe that adopting that kind of diet would affect your Parkinson's disease adversely. And a diet that is full of fiber and full of phytonutrients or plant-based nutrients that include a whole host of antioxidants and anti-inflammatory molecules makes sense that it could help protect your brain against whatever is causing your Parkinson's disease. So that's what I recommend, and that's what I detailed at more length in some of these other presentations.
So even if all a whole food plant-based diet does for Parkinson's patient is to prevent or reverse cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, if we can do that much despite being neutral on helping Parkinson's symptoms and reversing its cause, it would be worth doing, I would think, right? It's possible, but in the possible chance that it could slow down Parkinson's disease or help symptoms or even possibly stop it, who knows? But in the possible chance that it happen, when you want to give it a try. Therefore, the more a person can move from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, ideally, it's good to move towards a full plant-based diet. But that typically is a process. So I would suggest reading, watching some of the videos in the description below to get an idea on what you can do. However, where does one start with this? What is the first thing I need to avoid eating? If I pick one thing, stop eating, what would it be? Dairy. Dairy? Why? For several reasons, which you can watch the videos in Nutrition Facts or discover more links. One, the milk supply is typically infested with pesticides and toxins. They can normally find those in those when it has been tested. And of course, pesticides are one of the causes of Parkinson's to begin with. So why would you want that swimming around your brain wherever? Two, there's some evidence in studies that lactose can be a problem with Parkinson's patients, have negative effects on health. Three, it's also been shown that milk can lower levels of uric acid in your body. Uric acid, by the way, is one of the protective qualities. And so, actually, drinking milk, lowering uric acid, can make you more susceptible to Parkinson's symptoms. And if you're having symptoms, not lowering it all the time with drinking milk could cause your symptoms to improve. Why do some people drink milk all the time and not get Parkinson's? Drink milk all the time. It's all in the genes. You know that a person has certain genes like blue eyes, they're going to get it. No problem there. So we've tended to think of genes as definitive command type things. They say you will get Parkinson's if you have the Parkinson's gene, and there's some truth to that. 5% of Parkinson's can be traced back to the gene, having the wrong gene in your DNA. There's a lot more genes, they say, that provide a higher risk of developing in Parkinson's. So that's one of the things, the reasons they want to get a biomarker, so they can know if they can test for that. They know this person's susceptible or at risk for getting Parkinson's later on in their life, and they can start attacking the problem earlier. One of the ways could be through one's diet. So your grandma, who drank a gallon of milk every day for all her life and lived the ripe old age of 110 or something, well, why didn't she get Parkinson's or something similar? Huntington's disease or Alzheimer's or any of those diseases? Well, probably because she didn't have any of those high-risk genes that some of us, rest of us have. I probably have at least some of those genes, because I got it. But anyone with those genes can find themselves facing any disease, depending on what genes they have and what they're eating. That's why Dr. Neil Barnard says the following.
In other words, if you are avoiding the bad fats, even if you have the gene, your risk of developing memory problems was cut by 80%. And this is my most important point. Genes are not destiny.
Yeah, he was talking about cognitive decline there, obviously. And the fact that eating certain fats can increase the risk of that certain fats can increase the risk of triggering those diseases, and not eating it can greatly reduce the chance of triggering those genes into action. And they remain dormant genes in your system, your DNA. So I suggest, what are some other good foods to add to the diet? I suggest a good starch with each meal, like the whole grains, corn, potatoes, including sweet potatoes. Brown rice. Legumes are good because they have resistant starch in, which means not all the starch goes into digestion. It goes down into to the large colon. It feeds a good bacteria down there along with the fiber. It acts just like fiber in that sense. So those are good. Also, just adding some leafy greens. They have a lot of nutrients you need. As a side dish or a salad, top of a little low-fat salad dressing. On top of that, I recommend putting some blueberries in the mix, like with salad is a good idea. Or if you're having, or apples, slices, cherries, etc. Get the benefits of those anti-inflammatory flavonoids that they develop. So, try that for a week or two. See how you feel at the end of it. If you're feeling better, you probably will. If you're like me, you want to continue all of that. Because who doesn't want to feel better, right? It's Rick signing off. See you next Thursday. Remember, be you. Because nobody can do you like you can.